No one in the valley expected the storm to arrive that night. The sky had been calm just hours earlier, painted in soft orange and gold as the sun dipped behind the hills. But by midnight, everything changed. The wind began to howl like something alive, violent, restless, almost angry, ripping through the fields and shaking the old wooden barns as if they were nothing more than toys. And deep in that storm, something was dying. Far outside the small rural town, where the dirt roads disappeared into endless grassland, a faint figure collapsed into the mud. A horse. Massive, once powerful, but now barely able to stand. Its legs trembled under the force of the rain, its breath shallow, ragged, and broken. Every flash of lightning revealed its soaked body, matted fur clinging to its ribs, each bone visible beneath the skin. It wasn't just injured. It was giving up. And no one knew it was there, except a little girl. Her name was Lila. She was only 12. That night, she had been awake long after her parents fell asleep, sitting by her small bedroom window, staring into the storm with an uneasy feeling twisting in her chest. Something about the wind didn't feel normal. It felt intentional, like it was calling her. Then she heard it. A sound so faint she almost thought she imagined it. A cry. Not human. Not wild. Something in between. Lila pressed her forehead against the cold glass, scanning the darkness. The rain blurred everything, but then, another sound. Stronger this time. A desperate, painful hoarse whinny carried by the wind. Her heart stopped. Without thinking, she grabbed her jacket and ran downstairs barefoot, ignoring the thunder shaking the house. Her mother's voice called out from the hallway, but Lila didn't stop. She couldn't. Something was out there. Something was suffering. And it needed her. Outside, the storm hit her instantly like a wall. Rain slammed into her face, wind pulling at her clothes, almost forcing her back. But she kept going, flashlight shaking in her hand as she stepped into the darkness of the field behind their home. Each step sank into mud. Each breath felt heavier than the last. "Hello," she shouted, but the wind swallowed her voice. Then she heard it again. Closer. This time, it wasn't just a sound. It was movement. Through the storm, she saw it, barely visible between flashes of lightning. A shape collapsing near the old fence line that separated their land from the abandoned pasture beyond. Her flashlight beam cut through the rain. And there it was. A horse. But not like any horse she had ever seen. It wasn't wild with energy or fear. It wasn't standing tall and defiant. It was broken. Its head hung low, soaked manure dripping like strands of wet rope. One of its legs twisted awkwardly beneath it, trembling every time it tried to rise. And yet, its eyes. Even in pain, even on the edge of collapse, its eyes were alive. Watching her. Waiting. Lila took a step forward, then another. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Every instinct told her to run back, to safety, to warmth, to her parents. But something stronger held her there. The horse flinched when she got closer, trying to pull itself away, but it had no strength left. "It's okay," she whispered through the storm, her voice trembling. "I won't hurt you." A flash of lightning struck behind her, illuminating the scene in a terrifying brightness. The horse reared slightly in panic, then collapsed again with a painful sound that made Lila's chest tighten. That's when she saw it. A deep wound along its side. Not fresh. But not old either. Something had been chasing it. Or something had already caught it. Lila swallowed hard. "Who did this to you?" she whispered, even though there was no answer. Another thunderclap shook the ground. The horse let out a weak, broken sound, half fear, half surrender. And in that moment, Lila understood something she couldn't explain. If she left, it would die before morning. The storm wasn't just weather anymore. It was time running out. Behind her, the farmhouse lights flickered in the distance. Warmth. Safety. A world that felt suddenly very far away. But in front of her was life hanging by a thread. Lila reached out slowly. Her hand hovered inches from the horse's soaked face. The animal trembled, but didn't move away this time. That tiny moment, that fragile pause between fear and trust, felt like the entire world had stopped breathing. And then, the horse blinked. Slowly. like it was deciding whether to believe her. And just as Lila's fingers finally touched its wet forehead, a loud, unnatural sound echoed from the darkness beyond the fence. Something else was out there, watching, waiting, and it wasn't alone. The sound that echoed from beyond the fence didn't belong to the storm. It was deeper, heavier, like something dragging across wet ground with deliberate patience, as if it knew exactly where it was going and exactly what it wanted. Lila froze with her hand still resting on the horse's forehead, feeling the animal's sudden tension ripple through its body. Its ears snapped back, nostrils flaring, and for the first time since she found it, it tried to move, not toward her, but away from the direction of that sound. It's okay, she whispered again, though her voice was nearly lost in the wind, but even she didn't fully believe her own words anymore because now the storm felt different, like it had become a cover for something else moving in the dark pasture beyond the broken fence. Another flash of lightning struck, and in that brief violent brightness Lila saw it, a second shape in the distance, standing still, too still, half hidden behind the skeletal branches of an old dead tree. It wasn't a horse. It was bigger in the wrong way, broader, more rigid, and the way it stood made her stomach twist with instinctive fear. The injured horse beside her let out a weak, broken sound, almost like a warning, almost like recognition, and suddenly Lila realized this wasn't random. This horse hadn't just collapsed here by accident. Something had chased it. Something had driven it through the storm until it could run no more. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she slowly shifted her body, placing herself slightly between the horse and the darkness beyond the fence, not even understanding why she did it, just that she couldn't leave it alone now. "I'm here," she said softly, more to herself than anything else, because the wind was too loud and the world too dangerous, but the horse seemed to hear her anyway, its trembling slowing just a fraction, as if her voice was the only thing holding it together. Another crack of thunder rolled across the valley, and the distant shape moved again, just slightly, enough to confirm it wasn't imagination. Lila took a shaky step backward, pulling her flashlight tighter, and when she swept the beam toward the fence line, there was nothing there anymore. But the feeling remained. Watching. Waiting. Breathing with the storm. The injured horse tried to rise again, legs slipping in the mud, but collapsed immediately with a painful groan that made Lila's chest tighten so hard she thought she might cry. No, don't move," she pleaded, stepping closer again despite her fear, placing both hands gently on its neck now, trying to steady it, trying to keep it grounded in the only safe thing left in this nightmare. The presence of a small girl who had no idea what she was doing but refused to walk away. In the distance, a dog barked once from somewhere near the farmhouse, sharp and panicked, then silence again, which somehow felt worse. Lila looked toward the house, the warm yellow glow of windows flickering through the rain, and for a split second she thought about running back, about calling her father, about letting adults take over. But when she looked back at the horse, she saw something that stopped that thought completely. Its eyes were not just scared. They were pleading. Not for help in general, but specifically for her. Like it had already decided she was the only reason it was still alive. Another gust of wind slammed into them, and the horse shuddered violently, its breathing shallow and uneven. Lila realized with sudden clarity that it wasn't just the wound or the storm killing it. It was exhaustion, fear, and something deeper, something like surrender. "You can't give up," she whispered urgently, leaning closer, her forehead almost touching its wet mane. "Not now, not here," and somehow, impossibly, the horse responded, not by standing, not by recovering, but by staying still. By not collapsing further. As if it understood. As if it chose her voice over the darkness. But then the storm shifted again, a strange lull passing through the wind, and in that unnatural quiet Lila heard it once more, the dragging sound, closer now, moving along the far side of the fence, circling them slowly like something patient and certain. She swallowed hard, gripping the horse tighter without thinking, and that's when she noticed something horrifying. The horse wasn't just injured. There were marks on its body that didn't come from a fall or accident. Deep impressions, like it had been grabbed, restrained, maybe even forced to run until it broke. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it, but fear kept interrupting every thought. "What happened to you?" she whispered again, but this time the question felt heavier, like it carried more danger than answer. The horse shifted weakly, pressing its head slightly into her shoulder for the first time, and that small gesture nearly broke her because it wasn't just trust, it was surrendering survival into her hands. Another flash of lightning struck, and for a split second the distant shape returned again, closer this time, and Lila finally understood the truth she didn't want to believe. Whatever was out there wasn't lost. It was searching. And it had found them. The moment Lila understood that something was truly circling them, the storm seemed to shift in response, as if the sky itself was holding its breath for what came next. The injured horse beneath her hands trembled violently again, not from pain this time, but pure instinctive fear, and it tried once more to pull itself up, slipping in the mud and collapsing with a sound that felt heartbreakingly human. "No, please, stay with me," Lila pleaded, her voice breaking as she pressed both hands against its neck, trying to steady its shaking body while her flashlight flickered weakly in the rain. The darkness beyond the fence felt closer now, no longer just watching but actively moving, circling wider, slower, as though studying them, and every distant crack of thunder made it feel like footsteps approaching. Lila's mind raced. She was just a child in a storm, holding a dying horse, and yet something was hunting them both, something patient enough to wait for weakness. She looked back toward the farmhouse again, the faint warm glow now feeling impossibly far away, and for a second panic told her to run. But the horse shifted against her, pressing its head into her shoulder again, and that small, desperate act anchored her in place. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered, more firmly now, as if saying it out loud could make it true, and something inside her hardened into determination she didn't know she had. The wind suddenly dropped for a few seconds, an unnatural silence spreading across the field, and in that quiet Lila heard hoofsteps, not the injured horses, not hers, something else moving just beyond sight along the broken fence line. She turned her flashlight sharply toward the sound, but the beam caught only rain and shadows, yet she felt it clearly now. Whatever was out there was pacing, matching their fear with patience. The injured horse let out a weak, strained breath, and Lila noticed its body temperature dropping dangerously, its strength fading with every passing second, and she realized if she didn't act soon, the storm wouldn't be what killed it, it would be exhaustion and shock. Thinking fast, she remembered the old storage shed near the edge of their property, half collapsed but still standing, and an idea formed in her mind, not safe, not easy, but possible. "I'm going to get you help," she said firmly, though she wasn't sure if she was convincing the horse or herself, and she carefully slid her arm under its neck, trying to support its weight as she began to guide it inch by inch through the mud. Every movement was a battle, the ground slippery, the wind pushing against them, the horse barely able to balance, but Lila refused to let go, whispering encouragements through clenched teeth as lightning illuminated their struggle in harsh, freezing flashes. Behind them, the darkness seemed to shift again, a sudden movement that made her glance back, and for a terrifying moment she thought she saw it clearly, a large shadow stepping closer to the fence before disappearing again into rain and blackness. Her heart hammered, but she didn't stop. "Almost there, just a little more," she kept repeating, even as her legs burned and her hands shook, because now it wasn't just about saving a horse, it felt like she was protecting something that shouldn't be left alone in the world. The horse stumbled again, nearly collapsing completely, but Lila used all her strength to hold it up, tears mixing with rain as she realized how impossibly heavy it was for someone her size, and yet she didn't let go. Step by step, they moved toward the dim outline of the shed, while the storm roared louder again as if angry at their progress. And just as they reached the broken wooden doorway, another sound cut through everything, a sharp, distant call from the darkness behind them, not human, not animal she recognized, but unmistakably alive and aware, and Lila froze for half a second, realizing with chilling certainty that whatever was out there had just realized she was taking its only chance away. The moment that strange call echoed through the storm, Lila felt the world tighten around her like a closing fist, but she forced herself forward anyway, dragging the injured horse into the broken wooden shed as rain exploded against the roof like thousands of desperate fingers trying to tear it open. The structure groaned under the wind, half of its walls missing, beams exposed, old tools hanging like forgotten ghosts, but it was still shelter, and in that moment, shelter meant survival. The horse collapsed the second they crossed inside, its legs finally giving out completely, and Lila nearly fell with it, catching herself against a rotting beam as she struggled to keep her balance and her breathing steady. "It's okay, we made it," she whispered, Though nothing about this situation felt okay, because the sound from outside didn't stop, it lingered near the fence line, circling again, slower now, as if it knew exactly where they were hiding. Lila quickly pulled off her jacket and placed it over the horse's shaking body, trying to shield it from the cold seeping through every crack in the shed, her hands trembling as she checked its breathing, counting each shallow rise of its chest like it was the only thing keeping her grounded in reality. The horse's eyes were half closed now, exhaustion pulling it toward unconsciousness, but every time thunder cracked overhead, its body flinched violently, as if even sleep wasn't safe. Lila looked outside through a gap in the wooden wall, rain slicing through the air, and she saw nothing at first, just darkness, movement of trees, and the endless storm, but then she noticed something that made her stomach twist. Footprints in the mud near the fence, large ones, not from an animal she recognized, moving in slow circles like someone, or something, was tracking them deliberately. Her mind screamed for answers, but all she had was fear and fragments of imagination trying to make sense of the impossible, and then she remembered something her father once said about abandoned pastures attracting illegal hunters who chased injured animals for sport or profit, and suddenly the possibility made everything worse because it meant this wasn't random at all. The horse shifted weakly beside her, letting out a soft, broken sound, and Lila immediately knelt again, placing her hands gently on its face, trying to calm it the way she had seen caretakers do at the small veterinary clinic in town where she sometimes helped clean stalls after school. "You're safe here," she said firmly, even though she didn't fully believe it, because the sound outside was getting closer again, slower footsteps now crunching through wet grass near the shed. Lila grabbed a rusty metal tool from the ground without thinking, a broken rake handle, and held it tightly, her small hands barely able to grip it, but it made her feel slightly less helpless as she positioned herself between the opening and the horse. The wind suddenly dropped again, and in that unnatural silence she heard breathing outside, not the storm, not animals, but something heavy and patient, and her entire body locked in place as she realized it was close enough to be just outside the shed. The horse sensed it too, lifting its head weakly, ears twitching, fear returning in waves, and Lila leaned closer, whispering urgently, "Don't move, please don't move." Even though she knew the horse couldn't understand the danger in human terms, only instinct. Then came a sound at the doorway, wood creaking softly, deliberate, as if someone was testing whether to enter, and Lila's grip tightened so hard on the rake handle her knuckles turned white, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might give them away. A shadow passed across the opening for half a second, tall and unclear, distorted by rain and lightning flashes, and Lila held her breath completely, convinced that whatever it was had finally found them. But then, unexpectedly, the shadow paused and slowly stepped back. Not leaving. Waiting. And that was somehow worse. The horse let out a faint whimper, and Lila pressed her forehead against its neck, trying to keep both of them steady, realizing that she wasn't just protecting it anymore. She was trapped with it, and whatever was outside knew that too. Minutes stretched like hours, the storm roaring again as if trying to drown out what was happening inside that broken shed, and then, faintly, she heard something else from the direction of the farmhouse. A distant shout, her father's voice calling her name through the rain. Relief surged through her so suddenly it nearly broke her, but she didn't move, because she understood instantly that if she left now, she would abandon the horse to whatever was waiting outside. Instead, she shouted back once, as loudly as she could, her voice cracking through the storm, and for a moment everything seemed to pause. The wind, the footsteps, even the fear. Then the response came, running footsteps in the distance, getting closer, human this time, real this time, and the shadow outside the shed shifted sharply, as if startled. Lila's heart raced as she realized help was coming, but so was confrontation. The horse lifted its head slightly again, sensing the change in energy, and Lila stroked its face gently, tears mixing with rainwater still dripping through the roof, and whispered, "Hold on, you're not alone anymore." Even as she tightened her grip on the broken tool, ready for whatever would happen when the door finally opened. The footsteps outside grew louder, cutting through the storm like a promise finally arriving too late, and Lila's entire body locked in place as she stood between the injured horse and the shed's open doorway, her small hands still gripping the broken rake handle with trembling determination. The shadow that had been waiting outside shifted again, but this time it didn't retreat, it reacted, as if sensing it was about to lose control of the situation. "Lila!" Her father's voice finally broke through the rain, closer now, urgent, followed by another voice calling for backup from the nearby farmhands, and the sound of boots splashing through mud grew sharper with every second. Relief and fear collided inside her chest because help was here, but whatever had been circling them was still there too. The horse beneath her suddenly tried to rise again, fueled by panic and unfamiliar voices, but its legs gave out immediately, collapsing back into the straw-covered ground with a painful sound that made Lila flinch. "No, stay still, it's okay, they're here to help," she whispered desperately, pressing both hands against its neck, trying to calm it as the shed filled with flickering light from approaching flashlights outside. Then it happened. A final, clear movement at the doorway. The shadow stepped forward. For a split second, lightning lit the entire scene, revealing not a monster or a myth, but a large, rough man in soaked clothing, holding rope and gear, his expression sharp with frustration and greed rather than mercy. Lila's stomach dropped as she realized the truth in an instant. This wasn't nature. It was pursuit. He had been chasing the horse. Possibly for profit, capture, or worse. "Get away from it," her father shouted from outside, bursting into view with two others, their flashlights snapping onto the man instantly. The intruder hesitated, caught between escape and confrontation, but the arrival of multiple people broke whatever control he thought he had over the situation. The horse, sensing the change, let out a weak but emotional sound. No longer pure fear, but exhaustion finally giving way to safety. The man turned abruptly and fled into the storm, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as he had appeared, swallowed by rain and wind like he had never existed at all. For a moment, everything went still except for breathing. Lila dropped the rake handle and collapsed to her knees beside the horse, finally letting the adrenaline drain out of her body, her hands shaking uncontrollably as her father rushed inside and wrapped an arm around her. "Are you hurt?" he asked quickly, scanning her face, but she just shook her head, unable to speak, pointing instead at the horse, the reason she had stayed. The farmhands carefully moved in, their voices softer now, switching instantly into caretaker mode as they assessed the animal's condition, and one of them muttered quietly that it had been running for hours, maybe longer, likely driven until collapse. Blankets were brought, emergency supplies opened, and for the first time the horse was not alone in its suffering. Lila stayed close, refusing to move away even as she was gently guided aside, her eyes locked on the animal as it slowly stabilized under human care. The storm outside began to weaken, as if the sky itself was finally letting go of the tension it had been holding. Hours later, when the rain softened into a steady whisper, the horse was carefully lifted onto a trailer prepared by the farm team. It was still weak, still barely conscious, but alive. Before they closed the doors, Lila stepped forward one last time, placing her small hand on its muzzle. "You made it," she whispered, voice cracking, and for the first time that night, the horse didn't flinch. It simply breathed, slow, steady, real. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, silent now, understanding more than words could explain. As the trailer lights disappeared down the muddy road toward the veterinary clinic, Lila stood in the fading storm, soaked, exhausted, but strangely unbroken. Something inside her had changed, not just courage, but understanding. That night, she hadn't just saved a horse. She had stepped into something larger than fear, larger than herself, and refused to walk away. And far in the distance, where the pasture met the dark line of trees, the wind carried no more footsteps. Only silence. The kind that follows survival.